Today I'm going to do some sketching and drawing inspired by my Ossie Clark book. I really like looking at books for inspiration, whether it's fashion book or any sort of books as images really. It could be history, architecture. But what I love about Ossie Clark are both his clothes, but also Celia Birdwell's illustration and textile designs, and she was genius, or I think she's alive, but she was really good at using color and print. And as I'm sort of doing skirts at the moment, I think Ossie Clark and her were really good at doing just really romantic late 60s, early 70s skirt, which make you feel fabulous, but are really easy and comfortable to wear. So I always tend to just quickly do a really faint sketch of a figure in pencil. You can see you can't even really see them, because it's just to guide me where my knees are, where my belly button is, my shoulders, etc. So I don't suddenly go bigger and smaller. And when I just draw, I use the guide, and then I just draw in ink or pen. And I draw freehand, I don't use any templates. Therefore, my figures aren't always that accurate or great, but I think it's a bit more personal. And the more you draw, the better I get. So mine, sometimes if I haven't drawn for a while, they're quite rustic. And then the more I draw, the more comfortable I feel. And I've sort of learned over the years not to worry too much whether the neck is long enough, or I rather be rustic and charming than perfect and a bit cold. So I'm certainly never perfect, but I hope I manage to sort of convey, express my style. And because I'm not a natural drawer, I really use my drawings to just communicate, and I think they do that well. You can see what I want to do, and it's in the end, it's just for me to work out how I want the clothes to look, what works, what doesn't work. So of course in fabric again it's going to look a bit different, but this will give me a bit of an idea of the proportions, stuff like that. So I'm sort of, you can see I'm being a bit inspired by the two dresses on the right there, but I'm going away from it. So this is sort of a weird, could be either a skirt or a dress. I'm going to sort of go with both and just try it out. I'm also half thinking of making my swishy skirt into a dress, or making a top for it. So I'm just going to have a sort of think about how I could do like a full outfit rather than a garment for it. Because what I love about dresses is that you can just throw them on and you're dressed and you can leave a house. Skirts are great because you can style them with t-shirts if it's warmer, or like me with one of my usual wool jumpers even in August. And I'm just going to trace all the sort of silhouettes, and well, then a bit more than silhouettes, where the garment shapes first, and then I'm going to add texture and print. But my first one, I've sort of added a little rick-rack or trim. And this is now going to sound a bit weird. When I was making this swishy skirt, I really liked it, but then I actually realized what I really love is the wrong side of the fabric as well, because it's a bit less shiny, and it's because my blue dress just works beautiful because it's quite muted, but the pink skirt is quite graphic, the print on the pink surface. So I'm half thinking about turning it inside out and wearing it that way. I mean, I'm sure my husband would point out that I'm wearing my skirt the wrong way around. So I thought a way of avoiding that would be to put, I've done the French seams on the side seams, so you can use that as a feature, and maybe even just I'm going to top stitch them. But all the ruffles, of course, are a mess. So I thought about just top stitching some trim on it to make a feature out of it. So this is the other sort of thing. This is a version of my skirt again, but I have thought about doing a version of my garden top to go on top. Maybe it's grown on sleeves, and then I can just wear with a base layer underneath, and I can wear it all year round and have a sort of romantic Ossie Clark look, which I love. And again, this is like a version of my swishy skirt, but more with sort of layers and tiers. And I love that sort of style where you can just you basically cut out lots of semicircles or full circles, and you just stitch them on top of a straight skirt, and you get these lovely flounces. And Ossie Clark was really fantastic at using bias in print. So I've done mine on straight, but there's a lot of these. As soon as you do bias, then it comes all slinky and beautiful, which is great as well. And it's quite interesting because you don't really hear that much of Ossie Clark now, but of course he really sort of revolutionized fashion, and Celia Birtwell, certainly her prints are just outstanding, and they still feel very contemporary and fun. I quite like the idea of adding a peplum at the top, and I know I've been sort of super fashionable recently, but it's actually quite a nice way of adding detail. Ooh, and sometimes when I sort of draw, you can see I'm sort of just trying to work out what I want to do, because I love that silhouette, but in real life I don't think I'm ever gonna wear a really deep v-neck. But on the other hand, it would look lovely. You can see I'm a bit unsure what to do, because I would probably wear it, if I had anything like that, I'd probably put a roll neck underneath. But let's just go with the v-neck and then see how it looks like. And I think that's always this problem. I love stuff which looks beautiful. You then actually think, yeah, it's great, but when am I ever gonna go out with a very, very deep neck? I always like daytime glamour. So clothes which look fantastic, whether you're going shopping for milk and toast, or whether you are actually going out for a meal, so you can sort of style it up and down. And I think most of us are like that. I can't be the only one who doesn't really dress for occasion that much, but more sort of want clothes which I can wear every day for anything. Having said that, there's a few clothes I have which I only wear a few times a year, and I love them for being special. But how many do you need of your special occasion outfits? So here, I'm not quite sure about the left one, because I might just back up, because it would be quite nice to have it silk and in a pleat. But that's what's nice about sketching a sketchbook, or even draping is another great way. It's just to play around really quickly with what works and what not works. And then sometimes, like, I'm not sure about the left one, so sometimes moving on is always worth doing. I love these as well. They're Ossie Clark's application for the Royal College of Art when he did his MA. And he was very young and very talented, and they're just super glamorous. I like to lounge around like that. There's another one I wanted to show you. These are great. And the book is great because it gives you lots of information, but it's written in a really chatty tone. So it's all about how Ossie Clark thought Yves Saint Laurent ripped the tuxedo idea from him. So I hadn't heard that. It could well be true. And these are great. It's just drawings as well. Look at all these tops. So I'm now going to have a sort of look at what tops could go with the skirt. So you could either make it into a dress, or you could have a separate top. And I think that's sort of really coming back, having an all over print. Or when the nice thing is you have a top and the skirt, you can mix and match them all up. So you can play with what's different prints, different print sizes. And I know for something like that, it's probably hardest to actually get the fabric you want, because Celia Birtwell prints are beautiful, but anything like that is very expensive, especially in silk. And because you need quite a bit, so you could sort of have a look at thrift shop or charity shops where you can find some old remnants. And what I do is I dye everything. So even if it's something where I just think, ooh, the colour is a bit odd, if it's silk or cotton, or to a certain extent wool, I buy it anyway, the fabric, if it's cheap. Probably defines me quite well. And when I've just done it, just dye it in the washing machine. And in a colour I like, and it works amazingly well. And it gives you a really nice, saturated garment dyed look. So I'm going to have a look at some different tops. And again, I've just quickly sketched out the upper bodies only this time. And I always start with a face because I sort of think it makes my little figures into people. And it could just be a little mouth, an eye. But when suddenly they're not me really, they're just, don't know where they are, but they just could be any women from any country, but they're people, humans, rather than dolls, which are quite scary. So what he's done really nice on this page is just use facings, or you wanted seams to add some sort of detail. And it's a bit like my Mexican plows. It's like a panelled look. I always call them facings. I know they're not called facings. They're more like panels. But it's sort of just because the skirt is so swishy and romantic. I'm sort of thinking about maybe making the top a bit more constructed, like he's done. It's sort of a bit more defined. That's really interesting because when I used to work in London, right near us was one of the best, what they call vintage, a charity second-hand shops for proper designer clothes at the time, called Relic, off the Goulburn Road in Notting Hill. And they said that at that point, which is quite a while ago, 2-3 years ago, they said Ossie Clark actually was one of the best sort of reselling garments because they're still really wearable and they're still really contemporary. So I love Dior, Balenciaga, but they're sort of big occasion outfits and they have lots of undergarments, so you're quite constructed and not very comfortable. So it's very elegant, but I think Lovers is more about you want to stride into a room or dance all night. And the guy who owns it, he always said that Ossie Clark just still sells fantastically because you can throw it on, you feel super glamorous. And it's really wearable. And it suits, because our figures have changed over the last few decades, so it sort of suits most body shapes as well. It's very feminine. And I'm just sort of playing around with different cuts, maybe adding, that would be like a waistband for my skirt, whether it's sort of tucked in, whether it goes on top. Adding a bit of pleats. I mean, sometimes if I just want to concentrate on the garment, I literally just start with sort of quite square shapes. And a lot of these are probably a bit more complicated than I'm going to go with in the end. But I think sometimes this drawing is a perfect way of just working out what looks nice, what's realistic, what you like. And I'm sort of always in two minds because I love a good challenge. But then there's life. And in life you don't really always have time to do a multi-paneled top. But then on the other hand, adding a really interesting seam is in the end just a bit of dart manipulation, and it doesn't actually take that long. to draft out, especially if you're just using a boxy shape. And if it's a cotton, it's a wool, you can stitch these corners beautifully. On the silk, I'm sort of really going to then consider, like, this looks great, but I'm not sure how easy it's going to be stitched in silk. But it would be really nice in different colors of highlighting the panels. And I think if you make it in silk, you just have to be really careful when you cut it out. The sewing isn't too bad, but you just have to make sure the silk doesn't move. And what I really love with the Ossie Clark is how the shoulders are done as well. So how he's done this sort of really unusual, like nearly epaulettes at the shoulder, and then the sort of actually armholes further in. It's very clever. And you can see sort of towards the back there's maybe a more commercial version, and the one at the front is very clever. And I think he's one of these sort of designers who sort of just look at the flowing garments, and that's what you remember with Ossie Clark. But really, he's much more than just flower dresses. He's quite clever. And at the moment, I sort of quite love, it's really because I used to be really sort of meh about the 70s, but I think Gucci has been really good at sort of making the 70s, making us look at the 70s again, because I think a lot of the time we just see the sort of brown and wallpaper rather than all the really beautiful glamorous dresses. And someone like Ossie Clark, it's just, yeah, still looks contemporary, it's great fun, and the colours are so fantastic. And I also think that at the moment there's lots of sort of TV series set more in the 70s, 80s, so you suddenly, like, your focus shifts and you think, oh yeah, that's actually really nice clothes. And of course what I love about the, like, a lot of you probably know I love Mrs. Maisel and I love Mad Men, but they're always clothes for women who are really defined by the house. I mean, what I love about the 70s is lots of women who go out to work and they do stuff. It's clothes for doing things rather than, I love the Mad Men, is clothes for looking pretty. And even Mrs. Maisel, like, she looks amazing, but it's very restrictive clothing, as much as I love it. So I like clothes where you can, you know, you are somebody who does something, not somebody who's seen. So I'm just going to fill in some sort of patterns. And this is, sometimes I think you have to sort of let yourself just some freedom, just to try out stuff, and you might not make any of them. But just by playing around like that, you actually explore options and gives you new ideas for drafting. So I might end up making a really simple top to go with my skirt. But I've actually tried out different options and seen, ooh, you're sort of like letting your mind play in a way. And I think that's what I love about drafting as well, because if you, I quite like starting by looking at something like a finished garment, but actually just saying, ooh, what happens next? What happens if I change colours? And that's what I like about inks as well. They're really uncontrolled. So pattern cutting is very, very controlled. You can't mess around. You have to get your seam allowance right. So this is the sort of other side of fashion and making clothes I really love, where you can just play around and nothing gets broken. And you just explore different colours, different cuts. And then you might say, oh, actually, I'm only going to use the collar from the whole page, but I've tried it out and I've explored new ways. For example, I really like this blouse with a little bow tie. And I've just did the roll collar drafting tutorial, and both, actually even a portrait collar. I quite like the idea of having some sort of tie at the front. But that's, again, it's like also romantic. Could be even nice on a cotton. But just sort of adding a bit of detail at the front. And actually even at the back, but a blouse like that with just attached sleeves. And when in winter you can wear with a layer underneath, and in summer like that. And what I like about a lot of these is that they're quite all year round. So in winter you can, that's what I love about my blue dress. In winter I just wear with a base layer underneath and a pair of tights, and in summer you just throw it on, and it sort of works both ways. And I think one thing is probably is to, at the moment I'm going really super bright. I'm having a bit of fun. But in real life, I think if you make it in a slightly more muted pink, you can probably wear it all year round. But I'm certainly planning to wear my skirt all year round. And maybe with the blouse, I'm still in two minds, because I think I quite like something with like long sleeves, so you can throw it on. But on the other hand, if you make it with short sleeves, you just put something underneath. Either way, but long sleeves are nice because you just feel, if it's even if it's hot, it's quite nice to have it, if it's thin, to have a long sleeve so you don't get burned. And it's funny because the blue dress is one of these dresses where you always get compliments by women. I think women really get sort of, where you just want to throw in a garment and it's swishy and it makes you feel great. But my husband he does a certain face where I can just tell it's a good dress because he finds it interesting, which means it's a great dress because it's not really his style. And I think it says stuff, I'm kind of the only one. I dress mostly for my friends, for other women who I admire. So if my husband likes something, I know, yeah, it's pretty, but it might need something else put on top. But if you go to work or somewhere, or you see your friends and they like it, and you know, yes, this is good. Am I the only one? Let me know. I might be. I also think it's if you make clothes to yourself, you really know yourself quite well, and what you want to wear and what you're going to do with it. So you can make clothes which fit you well. And what I do is the ink, I'm using it literally this way. You get quite a nice, not ombre, but it starts out really strong, and then you can just dip your brush in the water again and you get the sort of tonal look. So it's very much like the print. And this is more like an acid version of my skirt. But I still think you can see this sort of all over print. And there's a great woman on Instagram. I think she's called Katie something. Katie, she's from California, but she does amazing how she mixes up the different prints. But I sometimes wonder whether, oh yeah, it's Katie is it Katie Courtman? I'm not 100% sure, but she is all over the place. But it's that sort of where she uses the same print in different sizes or different colors, and you all mix and match it. And I think you have to be in the right mood. It's like it's sort of clothes you put on when either the sun is shining, or also maybe you're feeling quite positive. I always have like two wardrobes. One is sort of all like very muted dark colors, and the other one is quite bright and cheerful. And sometimes if you're feeling a bit down, if you actually put something on which is really bright, it actually makes you feel a bit more positive about yourself. Instant therapy. Actually, I have to say, I quite fancy a really neon pink dress. And then the lovely thing is that you can just keep all your accessories, whatever, you keep them really neutral. Especially if it's a skirt, you can, when either you wear it all over and you're out there. And I always love it. That's what I love about the Ankara prints as well. They just pop. They have amazing color combinations, and because they're cotton, they have the waxed cotton, the beautiful sculpturalness. So quite different from a silk, but again, it's just a print which pops out. And then the great thing is you can either go all over and stand out, or for day wear, you just combine it with a neutral jumper and neutral shoes, or even maybe like a sort of I love wearing my silk dress with like quite a rustic men's belt in like a brown, and that way it sort of tones it down and disrupts it and brings a bit of different texture to it. At the moment it all looks a bit like a mess because I've only done one colour of ink, so I sort of think I need to add a little bit more. And this is from having taught drawing for quite a few years. I think you either have to sort of stop, or once you reach this stage where you think, oh, it's a mess, you just have to keep on going. So either once you get to the step, there's no turning back. Because the moment just looks a bit messy and half finished. So by adding a bit more detail, it then becomes visually interesting again. So I always think it looks nice if it's just ink, like pen lines. That looks really nice, and it's just a really quick sketch. But once you dive into color, you have to really think to just do a quick color wash, which looks amazing. Like Rene Gray, he was very precise with his colors and just minimalistic. Is it the right pronunciation? Rene Gray? I'll put him in the description below. He was a beautiful fashion illustrator. And he just uses solid color, very controlled black line. And yes, I've just spilled some ink. So this is the opposite. This is sort of going pure Celia Birdwell, adding lots of color. What I was reading about her, what I loved about her is that all the women are like her, and she started drawing them, I think, when she was still a child, and everybody just looks like her. And I think sketchbooks are really not for, I know I'm sharing it with you, but I think it's not to worry, but it has to look a certain way. It's about exploring things without having to have a finished product. So it can go wrong. I can just go to the next page and that's it. That's what I love about it. But also I think it lets you, by having a sketchbook, if you do on paper and you think, oh god, this is awful, you throw it away and you never see it again. With a sketchbook you can actually sort of see the development, and then you might go back on and say, yes, okay, this page didn't work, but I can use this bits of it. And that's actually the same as drafting. With drafting, if something doesn't work, and quite often if you're doing something you have never done before, it might not be how you liked it or how you thought it would be, is to then just put it aside, put it in your pile, like me, keep a pattern, and then just sort of revisit it again, and also look about maybe the imagery that inspired it, or similar clothes and how they've solved whatever you don't like about it. Because I think this is one of my bugbears in any sort of film or TV program or stuff like that. They draw one beautiful image and it looks amazing, and then they go and they cut it out and they drape it and they put it on and they leave the house the next morning. Everything is perfect. And real life isn't like that. It's quite messy. I think I've done a few drafting things where I've done it and straight away you think, yes, this is beautiful, this is magic. But most of the time, quite often you do something when you it might work, or you might put it back for a bit and think, ooh, how can I adapt it? Especially if you're doing something new. If you have one, I've got a few patterns I love, and then you just remake them and they work every time. And it's quite nice to have something like that because it's a confidence booster. But then the nice thing about trying out new stuff is that you really get to challenge yourself and learn stuff. And some of my best garments they've made something. Actually, the blue dress, which have inspired the skirt, the winter version, it was a complete disaster because it was going to be a shirt dress, and I've done it in cotton, and it was a really nice shirt dress, and I made it with silk. And basically every single thing was wrong about it. And I think I just left it for a week or two. And then I went back and I put lots of darts in and gathers. And then suddenly now it's my favourite dress. And it's the same with sketchbooks. It's not to think, oh, this has to be a beautiful end product. It could be that you go back in a few months' time and say, oh, I actually really like the bright green, or I like how the panels look and stuff. And you might do it in a wool. That'd be really nice as an overtop for winter, for example. I like to make just a few notes, just to sort of, for the whole point, if I go back in a few months, this is what I was actually drawing, of how to put it together, the layers. And also if I'm not sure about it, for example the skirt, whether it's going to be pleated or bias, I can then just see, actually I might go back and see, oh, that's trousers. But it's just so worth noting, because at the moment we're not super precise. And also write down what you don't like. So I don't actually like the collar, I don't think it works at all, but when you just start drawing, I drew a collar. And then also, to be quite honest, it doesn't have to be all conceptual and stuff. It can be just notes. So this is a bit more Frida Kahlo, the top row. So it's gone a bit too bright, which I'm not sure because I can silk, but I really love this one, and I've made Vicky a similar top. And these bottom two remind me of the Mexican tops a bit. But I quite like to make them even silk or wool, so they're less obvious Frida Kahlo. And then the bottom, yeah, they're even be nice in wool or silk, or even in cotton, but a bright red is quite unusual. Be nice with jeans. The middle one is my favourite, I think. As I said, the top with the little bow tie is lovely, and would work really well with my swishy skirt. So that's my sketchbook on Ossie Clark, with a bit of Frida Kahlo thrown in for good measure. I hope my ramblings went to all over the place, and I'd love to hear your comments below.